Is tough, but raising a teenage daughter, well, that comes with its own set of challenges and can leave mums and dads feeling pretty overwhelmed and out of answers.
Well, from boys to body image, today on Parent Track, we've got the foolproof strategies, well, we're going to try, for raising teenage girls. That's a big ask. Yeah. For more, we're joined by author Dr. Sarah Hughes. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Okay, so we're talking about teenage girls in particular. Let's start with body image and dieting. It's a big one. Yeah. I mean, they're bombarded these days. Instagram images, the Kardashians getting around with no clothes on. How can parents address this topic and this tidal wave of pressure?
Yeah, well, I think it's really hard because I think a lot of parents try to address it by really limiting sort of social media, for example, which sort of makes sense because that's where a lot of it comes from. But I think the problem is that technology is everywhere now, and so even if we do sort of, you know, block access to social media, kids are going to find a way to access it through their friends' phones, do different computers, so it's not always an effective strategy. And I think instead of focusing on the areas that we can't control, like what's happening out there in the media, it's more about trying to create a really strong counter message at home. And so I think a lot of the time we get drawn into, because it's sort of just infiltrated our way of thinking as well, but a lot of the time we get drawn into kind of very weight-focused messages at home, especially around dieting and the types of clothes that we wear as well. And so I think it really needs to come back to trying to focus on, you know, function of our body and trying to encourage, when we are eating, encouraging kind of eating for a specific function. So if you're studying for exams and things, trying to make sure that we're eating foods that are really going to help us to be able to concentrate. High sugary foods aren't going to really necessarily do that. We're going out to sport, making sure that we're eating before the game to fuel up for that, and then eating to recover and help our body after that as well. But just trying to change that weight-focused message.
Is it extra complex nowadays because for parents who don't understand what social media is and what's happening on social media? Because we used to be able to say, oh yeah, we went to school, we did that, we know about that. Now parents don't know what's happening on social media.
Yeah, and I think it's a whole, like, you couldn't pay me enough money to go back to high school now. I think that it's like, it's such an intense environment, and at least, you know, we didn't have mobile phones when I went to high school, and that was a blessing, I think. And now, you know, kids can't switch off ever because they're kind of going home and then bombarded by these messages then as well.
So we need the advice of what to do. So let's move on to dating. What are the rules when it comes to dating?
Such a difficult one. And I think one of the biggest things that I would say is that we're not really talking to teens enough about sex. And I think when we are talking to them about sex, a lot of the time we're only focusing on things like STDs and pregnancy, because those are the biggest fear areas, I guess. But I think we also really need to be making sure that we're talking to teens about, you know, if you're ready and how to know if you feel ready, and those kinds of conversations as well.
And we have a graphic here about friends and bedrooms, because this is a big one when it comes to teenage years, isn't it? And here's some tips.
Yeah. And I think definitely if your daughter does have a boyfriend, do kind of get to know them a little bit. Don't kind of just ban them from the house, because that's not going to stop the relationship, but definitely getting to know them and having conversations around what those boundaries are. And that will depend on the family. But, you know, is the boyfriend allowed in the bedroom? Is the door going to be open or closed? What are those boundaries?
It's something all parents dread, those early days at parties, right? What's your advice if you catch your daughter doing the wrong thing? If there's, you know, if there's drugs or drinking or breaking curfew, all those things.
Yeah, there definitely has to be boundaries, and I think that where sometimes we can go wrong is we get drawn into having these really long, drawn-out discussions with teens and sort of lecturing them about why it was a bad thing that they did that. But if they're then allowed to go to the next party without any sort of consequences or ramifications for that behaviour, they're not going to listen, and it's not a meaningful language for them. So I think definitely being able to set really clear boundaries and make sure that we follow through with logical consequences as well. And that might mean not being allowed to go to the next party. It might mean having to check in more frequently for the parties that we go to after that as well.
Okay, good advice.
Thank you.
It's a minefield. For more, you can pick up a copy of Dr. Sarah Hughes' book, because we're only just obviously able to touch on just the very basics there. The book is called Skip the Drama. It's a practical guide to dealing with a teenager's daughter, daughter's teenage years.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Coming up
Thanks so
on the
much.
morning show,